Okay, this is Duke of Doom Part 3. Duke of Doom. I was watching this movie called Unforgiven once, and it's about the Wild West days. Towards the end of the Wild West, and there was a reward that attracted a lot of fast guns, or shootists, as they were called later on. And one of the persons that answered it was, I believe it was a person whose reputation had given him the nickname English Bob. And he had his own biographer, who had written a series, in the story he had written a series of novels about English Bob called The Duke of Death. And I thought, well, I thought that might be a good sort of code word almost for the Antichrist. So we've come to call him the Duke of Doom. And if you see the movie, you'll see that the sheriff had another nickname for English Bob, and we sometimes use that type of nickname too. So, but I'll tell you what, when the Antichrist appears on the scene, he won't be any English Bob. Although in the movie, it seems like everybody suffered from the curse of English Bob as he ignominiously was driven out of town. But that's another story. That is a story. This is a reality. And here we're examining, eventually, the mark of the beast, which involves the famous passage from Revelations 13. And famous, I mean it is famous. The 3 6s. That the PR man for the Antichrist will cause that the whole world worship the image of the Antichrist, and that everyone should receive a mark in his right hand or in his forehead that no one should be able to buy or sell except they receive the mark of the beast. And here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, the number of man. And his number is 666, which is known as here in this era the famous 666, or the 3 6s. Now, I was just driving my car around a certain place, and I saw that number on one of the license plates, and it seemed to be a very popular number. When I was a street singer out in Auckland, New Zealand, one of the street kids had 3 6s tattooed in 2-inch high numerals on his forehead. Never a dull moment, eh? So, and when I was in art school, they allowed us to go to the Museum of Modern Art for free. We had free passes for the Museum of Modern Art on 53rd Street in the west side, just really between 5th and 6th Avenue, I think. And if you look down there, out the window of one of the rooms, and I think it was the room where the Monet water lily murals are kept, looked out that window, and there on this big building, I don't know if it's still there, but back in the 60s you could see it. In fact, I was looking out that window in 1966, and you could see in these huge 4 or 5 story high red numerals lit up day and night on this skyscraper, this with a silver facade. The numerals 666. And, you know, it's like, hey, probably 66 on 6th Avenue. I'm not sure. Anyway, they renamed 6th Avenue to become the Avenue of the Americas. But see, people have become obsessed with this. They even have made some movies about the Antichrist and all this other stuff. Very interesting. But here now is an interesting thing. If you take now you'll have to do this because my memory's kind of fuzzy on this. I'm just mentioning this in passing. But from what I understand, if you take the word computer and you count each number as each letter as a number, for example, C, A, B, C, so you count C as 3, and you take all the numbers of all the letters, it comes out to 666. I'm not quite sure about that. There was one famous politician, actually an emperor, who's in numerology. Now I don't understand about numerology, but I just read this in an article that the number of his name was 666. But only it was a French name, and only if it had the L and the apostrophe. Now, L apostrophe is a truncation for LE, meaning the, le. Now, if you it's only truncated if the thing that it's in front of has a vowel in front of it as a first letter, and this did. If the name l'Empereur Napoleon was enumerated by this numerology stuff, they figured that came out to 666. But you see, that means that it wasn't his real name that was 3 6s. By the way, I mean, what is Napoleon's first name? Does anybody know? Anyway, but if he became emperor, for a little while, there would be 3 6s. In fact, throughout history, there have been manifestations of the Antichrist, the Duke of Doom. Probably the greatest emperors, or the historic emperors, the certain pharaohs of Egypt, perhaps, the emperor of Babylon for a limited time until he got saved. Probably some of the Caesars of Rome. A lot of them behaved in a very devilish manner. And then finally the Antichrist. And there probably have been other manifestations such as poor Napoleon. And maybe Hitler. These are all manifestations. A lot of people thought that Hitler was the Antichrist. But you see, they can be manifestations. So I can guarantee you something is coming up. And if it isn't the real end of it all, it's a manifestation toward the end. And it's going to be bad enough, let me tell you. Because we do have this electronics now that can be implanted into human beings. It's started. The technology has started. And they're starting to push it. But now also, the world is a global world now. It's on a global scale. So whoever's going to be the next manifestation, and maybe the final one, may be the Duke of Doom himself. But whatever it is, it's going to be global and have a global outreach, and it's going to involve the implantation. Now, what about this? What about this when something gets put into the body? Well, including upgrades. People will probably report for upgrades. Eventually, with the amount of stuff it has right now, we've examined the possibility of people being able to actually have their thoughts controlled by an external source. That they will not be in control. They'll be out of control, really, but yet in control. But by somebody else. Well, remember I mentioned in one of my other sermons just recently, Stand Up for Jesus was the title of it, that now I used a kind of archaic poetic type of prose to declare the statement that the devil's societies have not existed except they have slavery as its basis. Now the thing is, I thought later on, yeah, somebody's going to take that and quote it in out of context. But the thing is, slavery is an important part of any of the devil's empires. There must be slavery, and that's what this is. When a person is no longer in charge of his own thoughts and becomes manipulated by others, this is going to be a form of slavery with this chip. A chip in a person's brain eventually. They're not going to stick it in the leg or the arm or a dog's ear. They're going to be putting it into the human brain. You know they're going to do that. That's what all this technology has been directed toward. And once again, you can say, 9/11. You can't pin that on people. You can say, oh, well, a person, actually it was a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. Boy, people are afraid to use that word, and for good reason. You don't dare prove something like that. The minute you attempt to do it, you'll be cut down. Well, there have been a lot of conspiracies, and most of them are failures in the world today. Because I tell you what, just about all of these people who want to be, there are a lot of wannabe world leaders. There are a lot of wannabe Dukes of Doom out there, and they're all going to be wiped out by the real guy when he shows up. Because he's not going to fool around with these people. I guarantee you, all you witches that thought you were going to be part of the world government, the Antichrist will not like you. Just like he doesn't like Christians. He's going to wipe you out too. He's only going to put in people who believe in him and his father, the devil, whom he will refer to as something like the God of forces. In fact, probably the force, or at least the dark side thereof, and all that kind of stuff. And on they go. That's the problem. Well, that's why a lot of these people have adopted the Buddhist symbol, you see. Because, like the Zoroastrists, they like to believe that there are two gods. A major one and a minor one. But you see, in this situation, we look at a scenario where no such thing. There's only one God. And this so-called opposition is led by nothing but a creation of God that has mutinied and wants to be God. In fact, his son, the Antichrist, will proclaim himself to be God in the temple of God on Mount Moriah. So they're getting ready with this. And you know, the people who have done the technology are probably going to be really upset, and they're going to say, well, we didn't plan any such thing. That's not what we planned. Well, you know, that may be so, but the problem is that all this is too convenient. There is a mastermind behind it, and if it's not human, then it's worse. It's the devil, because it's coordinating itself to work towards an end. And if you step back from the morass and just look at it from a distance, you can see the pattern. So this stuff is working to an end. It has an end. So once you get this in, this chip that begins to control your thoughts, that's when you revert to the institution of slavery. And probably even an older institution than prostitution, because it is a form of prostitution right there. And you know, human beings aren't the only ones who have slaves. It's been established recently that certain other species, like the ant, yes, the ant, enslaves other species. Certain types of ants enslave other species of ants. So it's like my joke, you know. This guy had a trained ant, and he was showing somebody, and a tornado came up, and they survived it, but the guy said, hey, have you seen my ant? And the other guy, he was still clinging on to the park bench, he said, the ant, sir, is blowing in the wind. So I could say that here. Both humans and ants have slaves. Well, that makes sense, huh? The ant, sir, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The ant, sir, is blowing in the wind. So here we have the mark of the beast, finally. And its number is 606. 666. Read Revelations 13. Catch up on that. So that's really interesting. All right, we're going to take a little break here. There'll be a break in the breaker. We'll go to the next section.